pass away, days burn, disintegrate, years roll along and fade. Don't let them slip away. Right here, right now, today. These are the good old days. Right here, right now, today. Hey, these are the good old days.
All right, well, welcome to Go Figure. And today, again, we're going to do something a little bit different than we've done before. We have a guest on today. We have Scott, Toy Guru Knightlick, and he has worked in the toy industry for 20 plus years. And stop me if I have any of your credentials wrong here, Scott, but you started working with Mattel in the Hot Wheels line, and then you went on to work with their DC brand, Masters of the Universe Classics. Matty Collector was kind of one of your brainchilds, if I'm correct. So that meant you'd work with like Back to the Future, you worked with Ghostbusters, all those kind of fun stuff. And then you went on to work with Jakks Pacific and their Big Figs line. And so you got to dive back into DC, into Star Wars. And then you did a cup of coffee at another company making the Nano figures, if I'm not mistaken, for DC. Yeah, and now you're running your own business as a consulting for other corporations, using your wealth of experience to kind of help them market brands properly. So have I got that kind of right?
Except for my pre-Mattel time working on glaucoma medication. Yep, you got it.
Well, I'm going to save the glaucoma talk for our next live stream when we just talk about the Venn diagram of medicine and toys and where they interact.
If you want to know about intraocular pressure on the retina and how, Lumagan can help relieve that, I'd be more than happy to discuss.
That's incredible. 3 years ago, I wouldn't have known those terms, but my dad had a scare. So, yeah, so now we're all familiar with eye talk, which is hilarious. But anyways, I think it's interesting. Well, I'll start off by saying I think you are a lucky guy in that when we were all playing with our Masters of the Universe toys in the sandbox and our Ghostbusters toys, as kids, we all said, wouldn't it be cool to make these toys as a job? Like, wouldn't that be the coolest job to have? And so not only did you get to do that, but I think the coolest thing that you've done is not just produce all those great figures and all those lines, but you got to dive into the mythos of Masters of the Universe and kind of take a hand in writing that and creating more of the story, but the official canon story, as opposed to us just, wouldn't it be great if, Fisto was Man-at-Arms' brother, or like all those things that we were playing as a kid. You get to kind of write that and say what would be canon and what's going to be official Masters of the Universe storyline going forward.
I mean, the career I've had, I'm so grateful for it, blessed. Like the companies, especially at Mattel, the opportunities I've had, 100%. I want to be completely humble on all of that. And it's crazy because none of it was ever like the plan. I always wanted to go into toys. I was always a fantasy, but like I didn't start Masters of the Universe Classics, if you will, or help start it. The 4-4. I don't want to take all the credit at all. With the idea that I was going to contribute to the continuity. Like that was not, it just sort of all happened organically as part of the marketing and the toy production and the situation, basically. But yes, it's amazing. And behind me, I've got a Fangor figure from Super 7 in the Classics line, and that was a character I helped co-create. And it's like a figure that was made by another company from it. It's like crazy. So yeah, I feel very blessed, feel awesome. It's great to chat toys. And yeah.
Well, I would say, I think why, just from gleaning and watching and hearing your story, I think why you were able, or why, it wasn't your plan, but you were able to kind of insert yourself into that world, get involved in that line, and then this like nucleus around you happened. And again, you had a great team, the Four Horsemen and Mattel behind you. And but I think everything you do, whether it's a project about glaucoma medicine or Masters of the Universe or whatever it would be, every project out there needs a champion. And depending on the champion of that project's passion for the end result, that's contagious. And when a team can get behind the champion, and champion does their job very, very well, then there's no end to what that can grow to be. And I think that, yes, you were a brand manager, but I would say that from what I can hear and from the stories you've told, you were the champion of those brands when you were at Mattel. And I think that is contagious. People get behind that.
I mean, short answer, I mean, yeah, people definitely do. I remember first hearing that actually on a Seinfeld DVD, like behind the scenes featurette, where they were talking about I couldn't tell you who it is, but like one of the producers at NBC who was the champion for the show.
Right.
And like no other executives did, but because this one executive believed in it and kept pushing for it, obviously it became a very successful show. And I always, that was what you mentioned about being the brand champion. And I did use that term once or twice online in Q&As, trying to explain the process and how it does that. And the thing that still boggles my mind is how much some of the hardcore fans like villainized me when I was at Mattel. And I was like, do you not realize I'm the one like fighting for this to happen? And like, not putting myself on a podium, but if I wasn't doing, I mean, look what happened when I left. Like, the reason it went away is because I basically left it with a full tank of gas, and they just used up that gas and then never replenished it.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it definitely always blew my mind. Like, it's still to this day, I get comments on my YouTube channel like saying what a liar I am, and like, it's like, what did I ever lie about? Like, what I don't know what I did to piss you off, but I'm really just trying to do this for toys. Yeah.
No, and I've been in that situation, well, not in the toy industry, but where you build up a program, or you build up a structure, you give somebody the keys to that structure, and you say, it's yours now. I've done all the heavy lifting. All you need to do is maintain this. But because they don't believe in it the same way, they don't have the investment you have, it just goes away. It runs its course, and there's nobody there to run it. But I think too, and I'm hitting a little close to the chest here, because you are clearly a toy collector, and I am clearly a toy collector. Look at that. There you go. Oh, look at Buzz over there. I love that stuff. Fantastic.
Yeah, I really do collect this stuff.
Yeah. But I think that our subculture can be very toxic when you're saying people getting very angry at you, and all you're doing is making great Masters of the Universe toys, right? And we have the modern toy collector right now has really been given every toy in the toy box. And I think back to when we were kids and we started our toy journey, because I'd say that you and I are in the same age bracket, same generation kind of bracket, and we were the generation that never stopped buying toys. We didn't make a conscious choice like, I'm going to go be a toy collector now. We just play with toys, and then in grade 9 and 10, secretly didn't tell the girls that we still went to the toy aisle. Like, I never went to the store. And then by grade 11, 12, we're like, I'm just going to boldly go to the toy aisle now, because that's where we're at. And we never stopped. And when we were kids, it was like, I could never find regular He-Man, because I was born in 1981. So by the time I was at the toy aisle, he was gone. But I had Battle Armor He-Man, and that was fine. That was my He-Man. I was content because I had one. Where the toy collector now is like, I want a very specific packaging. And because there's so much out there, and because toy companies and like Super 7 and Matty Collector give such a range of product, that we can get very toxic when we don't get exactly what we want for Christmas.
Yeah. And I think it comes, and I talk about this on my Spector Creative YouTube channel a lot, about, and really it's the emotional connection between consumer and product, and whether it's, toys or, fruit or shoes, there's always an emotional connection.
Right.
With the collector specifically, there's a very interesting, for lack of a better word, emotional connection, that it's really about acquisition and a sense of completion, that, having a full, collect them all tends to be our mantra. And
right.
having a full collection and having every figure, there's this sense of fulfillment and accomplishment I've equated it in a few videos to sports trophies, which a lot of us probably don't have. I was not a sports guy growing up, but I have every Marvel Legends X-Men figure from the 1990s.
Right.
Subset I collect, and being able to look at that on my shelf, and that was built over years, if not decades, to get all those characters. It's not like you just go out today and buy, go to a store and they're going to have all the X-Men characters. It's a slow trickle.
And
so,
it's a slow trickle for sure.
So it's a sense of accomplishment, and that's that's where a lot of it comes from, and and feeling, action figures also in themselves, create a sense of control, because as a kid, they're avatars for our imagination.
Right.
We're out and we're taking our figure, like this is me, or this is a bad guy. I got Plundar here, and now it's like being able to pose the character however we want and put him in context, meaning, there's Iron Man. So, having Plundar and Iron Man next to each other, right? This is never going to happen. We're never going to see this movie.
Never say never, though.
Yeah, I know, unless Disney keeps buying everything. But on our shelf, this can exist. And action figures as a medium, as an art form, can do things that no other art form can really do. That it puts the end user in control of the IP in a way. So that's, I think, a lot of why adult collectors are so wanting of that exact thing, that exact version, package, because they want this feeling. They want to be able to have Iron Man from this movie or this comic book hang out with this, this particular space bunny, on their shelf, and it's a visual. Our action figure displays, I mean, I'm looking at yours behind you. They're visual representations of what we love, and that's why we collect.
Absolutely, and I think there's a stronger nostalgic connection with action figures than there is with other things, because we spent so much of our childhood with them physically in our hands. We have tactile, permanent memories of being with them, as opposed to like watching a movie or reading a book or something like that. But when we created stories of our own, we have these like concrete, tactile memories that have a physical, a visual, a tactile smell to it, right? Like, Stinkor still smells like patchouli, and he still smells like my childhood, right?
Yeah, no, and I mean, olfactory senses are a huge memory reminder. Completely. I mean, like that new plastic smell that people joke about, and yeah, I mean, Stinkor is a perfect example. And yeah, there's also a thing called permanence when you make a toy, make an action figure. That using Plundar. Let me grab. Oh, do I have that here? I don't know. I have Mysterio and a Stormtrooper. When you make this, it becomes, it becomes real. It's no longer just a thing you're watching on a screen, which really a movie is. I mean, back when movies were shot on film, is just still images rapidly projected one after another to create the illusion of movement. You're not actually watching movement. You're watching the illusion of movement.
100%.
And so with an action figure, you're in charge. Yeah, like you exactly. And it's now something like when we did the Wonder Pig, right, in the Justice League line.
Yeah.
That was one that we had a lot of pushback, I remember, from the licensor, Warner Brothers, DC, because they were fine having Wonder Woman turn into a pig in the show.
Right.
Because it was just moving images, it was different pencil drawings, filmed 24 frames per second.
Right.
Doing it as an actual figurine, it created permanence. And there was concern about wanting Wonder Woman out there in this form because it made it more real.
Right.
Eventually we won that, and I was really glad we did, because it's one of my favorite toys I ever worked on. But yeah, those action figures are they're such an underrated form of culture, and we're the ones keeping it around.
Right. Well, I don't know if you have this experience too, but I always find that there's two reactions from adults when they see an action figure collection. There's the, oh, that's neat, and they get really excited about it. Or there's the more common in my experience, well, that's interesting, which is really adult for like, what are you doing right now? Like, what's this about? And so they don't, it's like, what's going on? But then 30 seconds later, they're like, oh, I had him and I had him and oh, that's good. Right. And all of a sudden they're there with you. It doesn't take long for that transference to be like, oh yeah, this all my nostalgic memories are coming back as well.
Yeah, yeah. Like there's that immediate resistance. Like when you were saying we used to hide it from girls,
Right.
Junior high. In fact, when I was buying a Ninja Turtle figure in junior high, like at 13 or 12 or something, I was with my father in Target, and he was starting to think it was very odd that I was still playing with action figures or collecting action figures.
Right.
And I remember very specifically, he said to me, "You can either have the action figure or the blonde, and you have to sort of choose which one is going to be your path in life." And I think I even said this at my wedding because my wife is blonde. And I joked how like I have both now. But it's like, yeah, like people who come into my office, at first it's like, oh my, they're overwhelmed because much like the display behind you, like every possible space is filled with something. But yeah, then it turns into like, wait a minute, that's Darth Vader, or like that's Buzz Off or whatever, and suddenly they're like on the floor, playing with my Roton, and like, oh my god, is that a Ghostbusters trap? Like, whoa, bring that out.
Right. So what I wanted to talk to you about today, kind of long form or main topic, is I think it's interesting. If you do your rundown of properties you worked on, so Masters of the Universe, DC, Ghostbusters, Star Wars, and did you do the wrestling big figs as well for Jax?
The wrestling big figs were actually made by Wicked Cool.
Okay.
But I did work on some WWE role play product at Jax. I actually went to WWE and pitched them to get the role play rights, which we did get. So
Okay.
I was involved in a WWE pitch. But I mean, when I was at Jada doing the Nano figures, we did Harry Potter and Marvel and Disney proper.
Right.
All sorts of I also at Jax, I worked on the Tsum Tsum line. I helped them out. I've gotten to touch a lot of properties that I've worked.
I think it's interesting that I'd say the bulk of the properties you worked on were properties that were in toy aisles when we were kids. Right? Those IPs are like become the evergreen IPs that, Star Wars isn't going anywhere. No matter how many failed movies they have, they're still going to sell Darth Vader and Stormtrooper toys. Right? And so we're having, and if you go to the store now, I went to Walmart yesterday, and in Canada, we can go to Toys R Us. But you walk through and they have Marvel toys, they have DC toys, they have wrestling toys, they have Hot Wheels, they've got Masters of the Universe Origins now. But it's all these kind of IPs that I think are really affecting parents, right? We're saying, oh, I used to play with those when I was a kid, and then so we're getting our kids into that. But I haven't seen in the last while a toy company come up with its own original IP. And I was just going to ask you from a toy making point of view, because again, I like the toy community, the collecting community can be toxic and say, here's the problem, but I've never worked at a toy company, so I don't know. So what's the difference in benefit or pros and cons versus having like a license you pay for from Paramount or Fox or whatever it would be versus a homegrown license like Masters of the Universe used to be, right? That was a homegrown one. Transformers back in the day would be another one that was kind of like homegrown, and then there's content came from it, but it came really from the birth of you want to sell these toys.
So, I mean, from a black and white standpoint, there's a huge advantage to owning, a toy company owning their IP because it cuts out so many steps and
Right.
so many restrictions you might have if you're working with a licensor, Disney, Warner, etc. One of the reasons that you don't really see that anymore and why we had such a boom in the 80s, there was in the early 80s, in 80, 81, with the Reagan administration, they deregulated the FCC.
Right.
And because previously you weren't allowed to advertise toys, say, do toy cartoons.
Right.
Hot Wheels cartoon in the 60s, early 70s that got chased off the air for legal reasons because they were viewing it as a commercial. So Reagan got rid of that, and that's why you saw that huge tidal wave of My Little Pony, Transformers, G.I. Joe, He-Man, Snorks, Silverhawks, Thundercats, Ninja Turtles, all of that.
Right.
Until Reagan left office, and then Congress reversed that in the early 90s, or like 89, 90, 91. So that sort of golden window was this just onslaught of creativity. And we've never had that again since. I mean, now we have, because of your streaming, you can make original,
Right.
You don't have to worry about FCC restrictions. And it is really interesting, yeah, how it's like they keep going back to the same well, versus you don't see that from other decades. Like we don't see Howdy Doody toys.
No.
Still around, or Davy Crockett, things that inspired toys in the 50s and 60s. I remember when Ben 10 is probably the last toy company created IP that's been.
I was going to say my son had Ben 10. I think that was the last cartoon/toy line that was an original IP. I remember.
Yeah, and I remember hearing around the water cooler people saying that before Ben 10. Toy companies were convinced that all the IP that could be created was out there. Which is sort of like when people said I remember in like the 1800s that everything that could ever be invented has been invented.
Right.
And then suddenly we got the internet. So yeah, there's absolutely room for new IP. I mean, I think that there should be. I think that there's only so much you can do to milk these old properties. Origins is an interesting example because you look at the the actual advertising that Mattel does for the line, which is minimal, but it's all aimed at the dad playing with the toys with his son.
Right.
Or, not to get into any kind of gender or parenting. We're not getting into that. While we embrace Origins, as He-Man fans, we're like, oh, cool, it's great to have, Skeletor that looks like the old one, but now he's articulated like crazy and you could mix and match parts. It's
right.
fun for collectors. The audience for that is supposed to be more that casual dad that doesn't collect toys, sees it and says, oh, I played with this as a kid, brings it home, gives it to their child, son, daughter, elephant, whatever, and
right.
They play with it, fall in love with it, and now suddenly it's huge again. The reason that you see He-Man and Skeletor pegwarming is because that didn't happen, because kids don't want to play with their parents' toys. They want their own generation's thing. They want to feel ownership.
Right.
I think the last few Star Wars movies underperforming, especially the toy aisle. I mean, the line that was put out for Rise of Skywalker was, pitiful. It
was weird.
Yeah, like compared to do you remember like when Attack of the Clones came out and there was like a wall of blue action figures that are like 8 feet, just the basic figures.
It was incredible.
Yeah, so, and like the fact that we don't see, I know we're totally tangenting around, but that's fine. That we don't see product for episode 7, 8, and 9 at, versus like, you look at what's being released in the Black Series or whatever, and
right.
It's mostly original trilogy with, some Bad Batch thrown in, maybe a little Clone Wars, every now and then like a Jar Jar Binks, like a prequel character, but you don't see anybody from the Disney movie.
When you log on to Disney Plus and you go to the Star Wars section, all the characters and the banners that come up are all either Mandalorian or original trilogy.
And actually, the reason for that is Disney Plus. So
right.
Before Disney Plus, Lucasfilm used to do, they would do surveys to find out which characters, which movies, kids, adults, whatever, liked the most.
Right.
Now they held down to the second what you watch. So yeah, they're getting their monthly report and they're saying, oh, Empire Strikes Back was watched 10 million times and Rise of Skywalker was watched twice. So they know
right.
what So like that's proof positive that they know what's working and what's not. And
Right.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, no, it's interesting too about the origins. You say so. We've raised our kids. We're both dads, which is neat. But we've raised our kids to be toy players as opposed to screen watchers. And so we have screens, but it's not the default. And so, and my wife and I very often would just be on the floor playing with our kids and encouraging that creative play. And so I know that the internet is telling me that Skeletor and He-Man are peg warmers. I know I'm hearing that. But up here in Canada, that is not the situation. And we were in Walmart the other day, and my daughter, who's 10, saw the Origins display, and it was, two mermans and a Zodak. And she goes, oh, and she had her allowance money. She goes, if there was a He-Man and Skeletor here, I'd buy those. Those would be fun. But I've never seen them. I saw one He-Man one time in Canada on the shelves.
Yeah, the distribution of that line is it's screwed up, but not for the reasons that fans think it is.
Right.
Essentially to bottom line it, the reason that it got screwed up, and I'm obviously I'm not at Mattel, but from my experience being in the toy industry and working with demand planning and retailers, I know how this works. And what happened from my guesstimate, and I'm damn, I'm right on this, is that because it all comes down to MOQ, which is minimum order quantity that you have to order per figure. And because in the first year of launch, it was restricted in the US to one retailer.
Right.
So no one else could order the product except Walmart. And what I'm guessing happened, because I see this all the time, I did when I was working for toy companies, is Walmart probably put their entire year's order against the first wave. And especially because they had to set planograms. When you set planograms, usually retailers have to order 60% of their annual order in order to set the planogram. Replenishment is a much smaller order. So Walmart has this huge influx of wave one to set planograms. And then Mattel's ready to go into production on wave two. But Walmart doesn't need wave two because they're sitting on a ridiculous amount of wave one that they've ordered for setting and for replenishment. So the only people allowed to order wave two are retailers outside the US, which includes Walmart's and Toys R Us's in Canada, as well as everybody in England and France and Uruguay. So so they order Universe Classics, and then those orders are turned into wave 2 and 3. Because, now Mattel now has fresh orders, so they can go back and they can't go into production until they have orders, and the orders have to be a certain, call it just for a sake, 5,000 units per figure. That's way lower than it is, but just a nice number. So here they have, an order for 20,000 units from, Toys R Us Canada. So 20,000 divided by 5, that's 4 characters. So they can now do wave 2 and hit the MOQ. So all of that product ships outside the US. And now they open it up to other retailers after Walmart's window closes in August or whatever that was. And the orders aren't as strong. I mean, it's basically really Target and Amazon in the US. So they ship the product that should sell the best, which is He-Man and Skeletor. They're shipping open stock, full case packs of He-Man and Skeletor, because as you said, your daughter walked in and those are the characters kids want.
Right.
So and it just snowballs from there, where they're shipping all, so for collectors, they're not able to find their variety of characters. And the reason He-Man and Skeletor are backing up for kids is because while there are some kids into it, like your daughter, there's not if there were a majority of kids into it, then what would have happened is the He-Man and Skeletor would have sold through to kids, and then retailers would have reordered, and that would have opened up new MOQs, and then they could have shipped wave 4, 5, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
They're not getting orders for those waves. And people say, oh, well, what about like the online retailers, your Big Bad Toy Store and Dorkside and Entertainment Earth? And like their sales on these figures are so minimal. Like you put all of them together and they're not even close to equaling a Target, let alone a Walmart order.
Absolutely. You can't compete with the big box store mom going to do her grocery shopping and there happens to be a toy out at the same store and kids are there and then there's the money to buy a gift to make them be quiet. Like
the shut me up gift.
The shut you up gift, right? And like you're not gonna that traffic is, when my mom buys Christmas presents for my kids, she doesn't go online to do it. She goes to Walmart, she takes a look and she gets toys there. Like that's how people shop for gifts and birthdays and Christmas. You're not going to compete with the traffic of like someone buying a very specific thing online. I don't think that's going to happen.
And those of us who are collectors who are buying that way, I mean, I buy most of my figures now. I pre-buy them online, and if they happen to show up at a store beforehand and I find it, I just cancel my online order. But that's the core misconception of the adult collector, which comes from our deep emotional connection to this product, which, going back to everything you were saying about our childhood and all that, creates a complete misconception about how many of us there are.
100%.
We are, when I say we are a tiny, I mean, action figures are already a tiny portion of the whole toy industry. They're one of the smallest. The biggest outdoor toys and toddler toys, and then games, cars and dolls are just so much bigger than action figures. And then within the action figure category, we're the smallest portion. So our deep emotional connection to this product just gives such a skewed perception of demand or how many of us there are, how much attention toy companies should be giving to us, and showering us with praise and obscure fully tooled figures. I mean, again, you look at Origins and you look at like the latest waves that they've shown online, they're almost all repaints. There's almost no tooling. I mean, Fisto is a head and a glove. Green Goddess is a repaint. Ava Lynn's a repaint. Merman is no new parts. The new version. It's just the version from PowerCon. So you can tell they don't have the orders because orders free up tooling dollars. And if they had orders, they would be showing more fully tooled figures. The fact that the later waves are almost all repaints is proof that the line is not selling.
Right. And I think it's funny too, a lot of toy guys and whatnot, and it's been put out there that, this is a line to get kids back into Masters of the Universe. And I was like, if that's the case, why are they doing like such deep cut, like inside baseball characters that kids have no idea what they're about, right? Like it's to me, it's funny that's the claims to get kids back into it. And it's these like the Green Goddess, and it was in a mini comic book from '84 for a few pages. And so you think your kids are going to understand that? I just think that's a funny way to do the line.
It's at the end of the day, Origins is really what I call a sofa bed line. You're not, if you buy a sofa bed, you're not really getting a sofa, you're not really getting a bed, you're getting this like thing that's not either. And it's like I kind of, when I saw Origins, I'm like, this is dead on arrival. Like there's you can't go deep into character selection at retail without dynamic content. I mean, Star Wars did it because it had movies for 30 years.
Right.
In 10 years, we would get another 3 movies. Other brands that, there's no brand that has a deep character selection without amazing content. And there's no He-Man content right now. And yeah, I know there's stuff coming from Netflix, but I mean, that's unproven at this point. Their last, She-Ra show, completely failed. I mean, from a toy perspective, those toys were on clearance, within a month.
Yeah. So it's funny when my daughter watched the new She-Ra show, and she liked it. It was fine, but then, and kids binge stuff now too, right? Like they'll on their screen days they'll go for it. And then when it's done, she goes, "Dad, can we watch the good one now?" And so we put it in Filmation and watched that. But yeah, it's a strange thing. And when I walk through the toy aisle and I look at it, I say a lot of these brands are being sold on nostalgia, right? And I said, what's tomorrow's nostalgia going to be if we don't come up with new IPs, Like what are the kids today going to be remembering that isn't like, oh, my dad played with this when he was a kid, so we were doing it together. What are their nostalgic memories going to be? And I think it's going to be all like video game characters and screen characters, and the world they got lost in that sometimes. And that's it's a sad thing, because again, there's no permanence there, right? There's the illusion of interactive play, but you're really quite passive when you're playing games on a screen, especially the tablet screens, because those games are so cookie cutter.
Yeah, well, we can have like YouTube influencer, like Halloween costumes. I mean, it's crazy. Oh, and by the way, I should also note, like, I'm not rooting for Origins to fail at all by saying
No.
that. Like, I would love for it to do well. I just know from being in the toy industry and how retail works and how content works that it's got it. I mean, it had a huge uphill battle. And yeah, like Green, as you said about the Green Goddess, like even casual He-Man fans have no idea who that is.
Right. Well, and to point, so I'm a toy collector. 100%. I've been a collector as long as I can remember. I went into the store and I saw, and the first time I saw it, I saw one He-Man sitting there. And I said, that's awesome. That's cool that exists. It's not for me, because I picked it up and I was like, the packaging's vintage, but his face doesn't look like He-Man to me. I don't think that's for me. I have my He-Man collection already. Like I have a vintage He-Man collection. So it was almost like why would I buy a Ferrari kit car when I have a Ferrari? Right?
And I'm the same way. Like with classics, I have a definitive He-Man collection already. Right. I know there's no way any other He-Man line ever is going to go as deep as that one did. So, like I always have a thing that when a company is making a product line that's also aimed at collectors, I feel like the unspoken contract with the collector is what I call filling a shelf. Meaning, if you're asking a collector to give up one of their shelves for a new line, you have to promise to fill it up.
Right.
And, Origins will probably, peak out at like 20 to 30 figures max. And I put out a video about this on the Spector Creative YouTube channel, and people were like, Motu Origins hasn't peaked. There's like all these thousands of characters that could still be done. And I'm like, no, I know that. It's peaked in terms of retail interest. Like, yeah, there's a good, there's always characters to do, but you can't do characters unless you have someone willing to wholesale them.
There's also the factor too. So when Masters of the Universe came out in '81, and I would say even when Classics came out, when you were doing that, it was the He-Man figure to have, right? It wasn't like you have all these to choose from. So within the next month or two, we're going to have 4 or 5 different form factors of He-Man to buy at the store. There's going to be all the options in the world.
That's crazy. Like there's going to be more He-Man options than we've ever had in the history of the brand. Yet it's at the lowest cultural relevance that it's ever been.
Right. And so I look at that and I say, okay, here we're going to have, or just go with action figures in the action figure aisle. Don't talk about Imaginetics and the minis and all that stuff. But we're going to have Origins, Revelations, and then the animated Netflix show. So we're going to have 3 action figure lines of He-Man.
Oh wait, don't forget Fisher Price, Imaginext, Mega Bloks.
Right.
And I'm probably forgetting Uno. I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, so he's everywhere, and those the mini ones, the Miniverse. But as opposed to saying, okay, we're going to have 6 slots for different He-Man form factors, even if you take one of those and say, let's come up with something new for the market, but it seems like the idea of creating something new is scary because it doesn't work on a spreadsheet. So before I was in my current career, I used to sell guitars at a music store. That's my other passion. And it used to drive me crazy because in a world where we had access to, say, 2,000 types of guitar, 2,000 SKUs, we would look back at our previous 2 months and say, okay, we sold these 45. Let's order those 45 again. And I kept saying, like, if you keep ordering the same 45, we're never going to know if the other 5,000 will sell because they're never here. So we're going to become a store that sells 45 SKUs as opposed to a store that has an eclectic bunch of merchandise that people can come in from all kinds of different interests and buy a guitar. But the data was so micro focused, so it's like, no, this store sold these 45, get these ones back in. That you never took a chance, right? And you look back at, and to take Masters of the Universe for example, it came out of saying like, Star Wars is kicking our butt. We need something. Okay, let's make a barbarian. Let's make a big muscly barbarian with a sword. Let's take a chance on that. And now we're talking about it 40 years later.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's much easier to do. So many times I would see toys, and then it's just like, okay, let's just do the same thing next year, but in a different color because it's proven. And yeah, taking risks is not something that the industry does that much, and it's got to creating a new IP. It's sort of like it's got to have a proven audience before they'll even think about making toys, and it's a vicious circle.
Right. So to do something a little bit different, maybe a little bit fun, because why not? Let's, for a minute, Scott, we've known each other now for like 40, 45 minutes. We go way back. Let's pretend we're a dynamic toy creating team that's been hired by Mattel to come up with a new IP. They say, we want you to come up with a new IP. We're going to make toys and a show about it. I think it'd be great if for the next 15, 20 minutes, we just brainstorm together and come up with a new toy line.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, I'm just going to get a writing utensil here to keep notes. And everything we do here, folks, is copyrighted. Just
yes.
We've already filed the paperwork for whatever this toy line is going to be. It is copyrighted. So I'll start by doing this. What would be 2 things that you think the toy line would definitely need for you, or what you would want?
And we're talking about a toy line for kids, right?
A toy line for kids. This is not a collector it's going to be a television show, and it's going to be an action figure line in stores. It's going to be, and I know we're going to get in trouble for saying this, but it's going to be geared towards boys. It'll be in the boys' toy aisle. And we'll talk about scale when we get there, but it's going to be a playing with, rugged toy line for kids to get into. If adults buy it, that's gravy, but we're not even thinking about that demographic right now.
All right, well, we're going to need figures and vehicles.
Right.
A play set. And we're going to need, different price points.
Yep.
We're going to need...
You're filling your planogram right now. I've been watching your station.
Yep. Although, we're going to need, characters that have different modes.
Yes.
Prince Adam to He-Man, Billy Batson to Shazam.
That's right. That was the first, just to sidetrack for a second, the first DC UC classic figure I bought was the Shazam. I thought it was the coolest thing I've ever seen. He was in his package. I was like, that hit me right in the nostalgia. So good job.
Thank you. I was really excited. Yeah, I'm a huge. I actually have a whole Shazam shelf.
Oh, fantastic.
All right.
Okay, so we're gonna have various modes, so some kind of transformation, something going on. For me, I would like our characters to have cool swords.
Cool sword.
I think swords always sell well. If you look at all the brands that when we were kids and going on now, a central sword was always a key factor. Sword of Omens, power sword, even power.
Swords do way better because kids can bash each other with them.
Right, it turns into role play. So if we have a sword-based combat structure, because we need to have some combat. All right, I would love it if we could have, much like Masters of the Universe, but not looking like that, but very basic bodies that we could reuse the sculpts for, and just different armor that snaps on them.
Absolutely, shared tooling. It's
shared tooling, right? So shared tooling. So, okay. I'm liking what we got here so far. So, and it needs to have some kind of story. Broad stroke story today, but not deep cut stuff. Broad stroke story. I think time travel, like Heroes Out of Time, is a cool idea.
you're not going to get me fighting time travel.
Okay, very good. So
that way we could have pirates and cowboys and astronauts and
you could
Roman soldiers.
Okay. So why? Hold on. What if are we going to say our main hero team is 4 characters?
Let's say 4 good guys and 4 bad guys.
Okay, so we'll do it an 8 back, so 4 good guys and 4 bad guys. Okay. So just spitballing here. What if there's an evil wizard of some sort, some kind of evil magic entity, and he brings, I like when you said Roman soldiers, that got me pumped up. What if he brought Roman gladiators to the current day world with a plan to have them do his evil bidding? But because these Roman soldiers or gladiators were so altruistic, they actually try to thwart him and stop him from doing his evil bidding. But in modern day.
All right, let me taking that and rolling with it. What if our evil character, and whether it's magic or technology, whatever funds the time travel, gets a group of the most evil villains from history? Gets Nero, gets Blackbeard the pirate, gets like the Simpsons did this in a Jury of the Damned episode.
Right.
Simpsons did it. So, and then on the hero side, they grab the greatest heroes of history. I mean, it depends on what side of history you're on, but like Alexander the Great or Abraham Lincoln.
Right. And if they're based on real people, we don't need to pay for their rights, like their public access.
As long as they're dead.
As long as they're dead.
Yes. Okay, and as long as they're like, I think there's a certain amount of years, but I think like let's just go pre anything I think pre 1940 you're pretty safe.
Okay.
As public domain. Like you do not need to pay for Julius Caesar or Blackbeard the Pirate or Billy the Kid or Robin Hood or anything like that. Well,
okay.
Robin Hood is no person, but you get it. All right. So what if you have like the greatest heroes of history versus the greatest villains of history, and they're fighting for control of some kind of time
portal. All right, I love this. So who would be so 4 and 4? 4 and 4 plus the wizard. So we'll do the wizard will be like the Mum-Ra mail away character to get whatever wizard is orchestrating this.
Well, then if you've got a wizard or a Mum-Ra, I think then you have another 3 because you want to keep it to 4 and 4. Okay. So we'll have our 4 heroes brought on through time, and then our wizard and his 3 henchmen for wave 1. Okay, and then I have an idea. But first, let's flesh out who would our 4 heroes be? Who would be the 4 guys we take? So I think you want to go for like aspirational motifs that kids like.
Right.
So something like so it's like pirates, ninjas, space explorers, gladiators.
Okay. So let's do this. Let's go genre. So we'll get a gladiator because they got sweet swords, and then we should get a knight. Maybe one of the knights of the round table.
Yeah, make it Sir Lancelot. Something someone's going to instantly recognize, or even
right.
King. Make it Sir Lancelot. That way you don't have a
But we'll get some kind of knight in there. We'll find a historic knight. That's great. It's funny because all the cowboys that you can think of are usually like the outlaws.
Well, that can be on the bad guy side.
Okay, but what about Wyatt Earp? If you brought Wyatt Earp,
could do that. Yep.
I'll put down Earp here because he could have a sweet mustache.
I just don't know if he's going to be as recognizable to kids as something like Billy the Kid.
Okay, I'll put Billy the Kid over on the bad guy side. What if in the course of the show, by season 2, Billy switches sides? We redeem Billy the Kid.
Oh, now we're storytelling.
Now we're getting there. Okay, so we have a gladiator of some sort. We have a knight of some sort. Billy the Kid's going to switch over. Blackbeard should be on the villain side, right?
Absolutely.
He was a bad guy. Okay. What about like a prehistoric caveman barbarian kind of fighter?
Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, other than making him like a caveman, who would be? I mean, you could make like the caveman one of the bad guy. He could be sort of like the the dumb one.
Yeah. So I'll just put like a caveman here. He's gonna kind of be our beast man guy, but he'd be in the bad side. Yeah. So if we have Billy the Kid, Blackbeard, and our caveman for our villains, plus our wizard, it's a pretty sweet team.
Yeah. So all right. So we have Blackbeard, we have caveman, the wizards. We need a fifth or fourth bad guy.
Right.
So let's. I mean, that could be. I mean, it'd be great to have like. Oh, go on.
I was gonna say, what about like a 40s gangster, like Babyface Nelson or something?
Oh, there you go. Yep, that would be great. Yep.
Okay. And he would have a bit more of understanding of how today works. It wouldn't be as foreign to him.
And then on the good guys, did we have anyone already? We talked about like a gladiator.
Yeah, well, I just have archetypes: a gladiator and a knight.
And a knight. There was one I just thought of, and then doing some kind of like a samurai or something.
Samurai would be perfect. You need to have some kind of you need to have some kind of ninja or samurai on the team.
And then I would have like a spaceman, like
From
someone
the future. I love that. Okay, so we have our archetypes here, and we could even we can figure out who they're going to be specifically, but to have our deluxe SKU figures, so those would be our basic figures, but our deluxe SKU figures, and this is just because I love them as kids. I think motorcycles make amazing toys.
They do. Yep. Why am I totally blanking on the stunt guy?
Evil Knievel.
The Evil Knievel. That's like one of the best-selling toys of all time.
Right. So, but what if our motorcycle accessories that you could get, and that was like the basis, they became like this biker gang.
Time-traveling biker gangs.
Right. And then the sidecar of the knight was like a lance, and the sidecar of the gladiator was like a net or something. Like all the sidecars were their weapon accessories.
But the pirate could be a cannon.
Oh, right. That is fantastic. And the spaceman can have like a laser or some kind of space bike. You can make his so that the wheels are hidden, so it almost looks like a hover.
Yeah, or like that, space Ghost Rider figure that came out from Marvel Legends a little while back.
Right. So, okay, so we have the basic concept here. There's a wizard who wants to rule all of time. So he builds a crew of villains to help him do that. So these 4 heroes are chosen to come. That can be the rule of time travel of this Wizards, is that whenever you take someone through time, an equivalent person is brought to keep the balance going. So for every yin, there's a yang.
Okay.
And that just removes the MacGuffin of like, how did these heroes get here?
Okay.
But a play set, what would be a cool play set? Because that'll dictate where this all happens.
So I'm thinking the play set should be the time travel lab or machine or something, because that's what they're trying to get control of, because whoever controls the time castle can control time. So they're trying to, it's the cave of time, or the tower of time. Tower of time.
And what if the Tower of Time, hold on, this may be very cheesy or maybe excellent, I don't know yet, was in a New York skyscraper, and then we can call the line Time Square Heroes.
That is awfully wonderful.
Right? I think that just sold the line. Anybody's watching here, we're going to get all the offers. So there you go.
And then they could have and then you could have a deluxe yellow taxi cab SKU that transforms into a like DeLorean time traveling.
Right? You could once you open up the New York aesthetic, you could have whatever you want.
They've never done a New York-based toy line. I mean, they do it for movies and sitcoms all the time. That's an interesting concept.
Right? Times Square heroes.
Wow. All right.
The more I say that, the more I think we have something going on here.
Somebody get Spin Master and Hasbro on the line.
Right now.
Right now. And we've copyrighted it because we've said it out. The people know, you can't just take it because we've said it.
Right. No.
Works. I don't know, but
this is our first conversation, and we are forever now bound as co-creators of Times Square heroes.
I can't wait to play with this line. This actually sounds really cool.
The sidecars is what sold me.
The idea of these time traveling characters on motorcycles, like a motorcycle gang threat from time, and I think that was the pirate with the cannon.
Right, and I can just picture like an '80s intro where they're like riding these bikes around, like because we remember the intros of cartoons more than the actual cartoons, and so that's fantastic.
Yeah, hear the song. It's like from the time of
See, you're already writing
it. It's like, they're coming on their motorcycles and zooming off, and here comes one right at the screen and blasts.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about this. Well, that was awesome.
Yeah, it should be very 80s in
I think the figures should be 5 points of articulation, maybe knee joints, maybe, but and don't reaction figure it. Like make them kind of like the early 90s, kind of like not superposed, but like there's a little bit of those action poses. Make them that kind of aesthetic. So they can.
All right, we've got some graphic artists. We got some work to do.
Okay, well, I'll talk to my graphic artist and get some mock-ups drawn.
Fantastic! I love it.
There you go. All right, well, this has been fun. Before I let you go, I would like us both to do our Mount Rushmore of action figures. There is a Mount Rushmore of action figures. Who would be on your Mount Rushmore?
Like if I had 4 or 5?
Yeah, so 5 action figures and your Mount Rushmore of action figures of all time. Who would they be?
Action of all time. It's funny because I kind of have one of my shelves here. It's
I have my Mount Rushmore shelf here.
My personal Avengers team here. I don't know if that's coming through.
Yeah, look at that.
But I have Savage Dragon, Mighty Spector, Cable, Deathlock, Darkhawk, Captain Marvel, Rorschach, Jedi Luke, Silver Centurion, Iron Man, and Supergirl. But I wouldn't say those are my absolute favorites of all time. There's no He-Man figures there. All right, so let's see. I'll go with, for 5, I'll go with, I'll go with He-Man.
Okay.
Classic, Motu Classics He-Man. I'll go with Savage Dragon from the Legendary Heroes line. I'm looking around my office here. Bender from Futurama.
Nice pull.
Let's see. Doctor Strange from the the SA Arts, that $100 one from Japan.
Yeah.
We're the only ones I own in that. I gotta have a Spider-Man, so probably the Marvel Legends Raft Spider-Man from San Diego Comic-Con. And then, let's see, I probably need someone Star Wars in there. Who's my favorite? Maybe Grand Admiral Thrawn.
That's a fantastic. Of all the Star Wars characters, Grand Admiral Thrawn was your pull. I love that.
Oh, he's the brilliant strategist,
Well, I think for the longest time, he was, to make a pun, he was a new hope for us. We're like, there is more Star Wars coming, right? If we can just hold on to Thrawn, we'll get there.
I have my Timothy Zahn books right on my top shelf. So
that when it was brilliant when I was in grade 9. In our English class we had to read a first 30 minutes of the class was personal reading, and then at the end of those things, you had to like write about what you read and how many books you do in a year. So I did the Thrawn trilogy. I was like, yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. But then I moved to a new school in a completely different part of Ontario, and my grade 10 teacher did the same thing, and I just read them again. I was like, I got this in the bag.
All right, so who's your Mount Rushmore?
So my Mount Rushmore, now I want to say I'm more into vintage figures than I am modern, because I found like Superman's my all-time favorite character, and so for just as an example, so much modern stuff was coming out that because we want to complete things, I was like getting anxiety. I was like, I'm never gonna get them all. I'm never gonna do it all. And so I was like, I'm gonna really focus on vintage stuff, and then select modern things will come through. But that being said, Superpower Superman, I think, is like the best quintessential action figure of all time. I think he's where it's at. Prince Dargon from the Spectors. Like if you look at that sculpt, and why since '85 no one has made a hand puppet toy line again? I don't understand. It's brilliant.
That could be a whole other. I've got a whole thing on that, but that's put a peg in that for the moment.
So Times Square Heroes Season 2 will incorporate hand puppets into it.
They get, yes, absolutely.
We're gonna give it the hand puppet treatment. Yeah, so Superman, Dargon. From the Masters of the Universe line, Battle Armor He-Man. He was always my He-Man growing up. Like he to me is more nostalgic than the regular He-Man, because it's just that clicking action. It was fantastic. So I actually, a young guy was in my office yesterday, and he was like, "What's that, He-Man?" I was like, "Let me tell you a story, son, about the Battle Armor He-Man." So now whenever he comes in, he's like, "Can I do the thing?" I'm like, "You can do the thing. We can get that done for you." Now this actually ties into our toy line a little bit, but Highway from Cops on a street motorcycle, and I'll tell you why. There was a time, Scott, where you'd walk into a toy store and see a whole wall of action figures that you had no idea about because you hadn't seen the show yet. It was just like a new toy line, and you're like, "What is this about?" And so when Cops came out in like '86, I think it was, so I was like 5 or 6. My mom and I, when I would come home from school, would watch Chips together, like Ponch and John. And so my 5-year-old brain saw Highway first, saw that he was a motorcycle cop, and just saw the stylized cops. And I thought it was Chips. I thought they was redoing a Chips line for a new generation. And I was like, "Mom, can I get Ponch?" I said out loud, "Can I get Ponch?" And she was like, "Okay, you can get Ponch." And then she also bought me the motorcycle as like in the car. She's like, "I actually got you this as well." And so it's like so nostalgic to me, those memories, but it's just a really cool line. And if you look at it, it's maybe the first like 6-inch highly articulated toy line that has really set the standard for modern toys.
That's I'm gonna have to go check out, see some pictures of that online.
Well, I have it right here.
Oh, that's awesome.
Look at that.
That is great.
Isn't that cool?
That is, yep.
So one of my all-time favorite lines, and it's stupid cheap to collect because nobody likes it. So like I bought this at a used toy store. I got the bike for $1, and he was $5. So collect those all day long. And so in my collection, I actually have 2 motorcycles and a blonde guy driving the other one, so that it's my like version of Chips.
Nice.
Yeah. So those ones, and then the Toy Biz Batman from '89, just because there was so much going on with that at the time. So those would be my Mount Rushmore figures that are like critical moments in my life where those ones came into play.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Toy memories are the best memories.
They are the best. My friend, this has been fantastic. I thank you for your time and for your knowledge. Hopefully we can do something again in the future.
Well, we got to keep working on Times Square Heroes.
Times Square Heroes it's going to take the world by storm. If I send you a very detailed email soon, don't be surprised.
I'll be looking for it. Absolutely.
My friend group says when they describe me to other people, they're like, "Yeah, so we got this friend Adam. And they're like, what's he like? It's like, well, he really commits to the joke. If you make a joke, he really commits to it and plays it out to its fullest. So this Times Square Heroes thing might just happen. But anyways, this has been a blast. So thank you so much for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Time ticks and drips away, days burn, disintegrate, years roll along and fade, don't let them slip away. Right here, right now, today, these are the good old days. Right here, right now, today, hey, these are the good old days.